Welcome, everybody, to Building a Black Educator Pipeline podcast. I am your host, Shayna Terrell, educator activist dedicated to the lifelong struggle of freedom and liberation for my people. What is up to all my co-conspirators out there? Thank you for coming back to listen to yet another episode of Building a Black Educator Pipeline. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And shout out to all the new supporters out there who have liked and subscribed and are joining us this week. Listen, y'all, we are up on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. So please follow, subscribe, listen. And remember to make sure to tell a friend, and make sure you tell them again to subscribe and like to this podcast. And as always, shout out to Brightbeam and the Center for Black Educator Development for providing us with this platform to talk to real people in a real struggle doing the real work. So the theme of today's episode is matriarchs and building a Black educator pipeline. There is nothing, y'all, like a mother's love. So today we get to connect with an amazing freedom fighter, an amazing mama in the movement for Black liberation. When you think and you hear about social justice, civil rights, Black power movements, a lot of people's minds and brains immediately go to like protests, boycotts. But there's another side to that coin that we just don't give enough attention to. And that is Black mothers in the movement. The people who have organized the communities to sustain the change that we want to receive and need to happen in the world. So we are excited today to welcome Mama Maisha Sullivan-Ongoza, okay, one of my mamas out here in the movement, somebody who trained and sustained me when I got to Philadelphia. So Mama Maisha, welcome.
Well, thank you for the welcome, Shayla. I'm so proud of you, and I enjoy watching the podcast. You know, I catch up with everyone when it's Greg Carr on there, but
yes,
you're doing great work. I've been really appreciating you and Sharifa. I'm just so proud of both of you.
Thank you, Mama. We appreciate you. And again, you know, we train our replacements. So
that's right.
I have learned so much from you, from being in your presence, from watching you, and you have poured so much into me. So, Mama, I want to say thank you.
Yes. Well, asante to you for being so open for whatever I'm pouring.
Yes. So, Mama, I want to start off. Can you share a little bit about yourself with our guests? Just talk about some of your current and your past work. Let the folks know who Mama Maisha is.
Okay. Well, I'm a 74-year-old. I'm 74 now. I'll be 75 pretty soon.
Hey.
74-year-old survivor and developer. I'm a survivor of the COINTEL. I'm a COINTEL survivor from the 60s. I became active during the Black Power era of the Black Freedom Movement. From my last years of high school up until, through college and young adulthood. Originally from Philadelphia, from South Philadelphia. Come from a very community-centered family. A strange. My mother died when I was 2. And my father still kept us together. He was like Mr. Mom before it was popular. But all the women in the neighborhood helped him. So I had all these communal mothers awesome. to help this man raise these children. Because, relatives wanted to split us up and take us everywhere after our moms died. He lost two wives before I was 15.
Oh, wow.
And both times he kept the kids. He wouldn't let the relatives take and split us up. He said he's not letting his family be split because he was from the South, and he knew about families being split up because of enslavement and all that. Right. And he wasn't going to have it with us. So he decided he was going to keep us together, but he knew there was a community would help him. So we had all these community moms who helped him, and he was the community dad for all the fatherless boys. So it was, reciprocal. So I had all these women looking out for me. They would tell them when I was time for me to wear a bra. They would tell them when, my older sisters, they were like sister moms, but they would, tell them I was getting to be too, because I would go to work with him. He was like a contractor. Mm-hmm. And so I was raised kind of non-traditional. I go to work with him. I handle tools. This is why I can do carpentry. And, I'm so good with my hands, because my dad would take me to work with him. just learned how to build things and reconstruct things and do things. So I came up very non-traditional in South Philly, being really a village child, being raised by all of them. And our house was also the gathering point for the community. My father cooked every Sunday, fish and grits, and everybody come there and get their fish and grits. And then during the week, he'd keep a pot of coffee on the stove. People come in, just get a strong cup of coffee. They said they couldn't move their bowels unless they drank my daddy's coffee.
Yes.
So we had this kind of energy that I had around me all my life. So people wonder why I'm like always out there engaged. That's all I ever knew. I've never not been engaged with a lot of people and not assisting people or having people assist me. It's just been all of my life. And he was a World War II veteran, so him and his peers, I would hear the politics talk about the Second World War and the Korean War when they were eating fish and grits or drinking coffee. And he would have me sit around and listen, and he made me read the paper every day. I couldn't read the funnies. I had to read the news so that I can participate in grown folks' conversation and know current events and know what's going on. He made sure that we stayed up on what was happening, and then I had to read to the elders, the newspaper, to the elders on the block, who I didn't know at the time were illiterate. But my job was to read to one that lived right next to us, to take the paper and read to him every day. I didn't know he was illiterate until one time, and he wouldn't let me know he was illiterate. He would pretend he was teaching me how to read. What does that say? I bet you don't know what this say. This kind of stuff.
Yes.
But my job was to read the paper to the elders on the block and have conversations with them about current events. And this was my father's way of making sure the elders were kept up to date, kept current. So it was that kind of way I was raised, and it impacted me and making me into the activist that I became. Because you will hear so much about issues going on, but you also hear how we were our first responders, right? And that what resources were already in our community or what needed to be in our community, because it all came through, like filtered through my house. And so it kind of like pushed me into activism early. And between that and all these moms in the neighborhood, one in particular, Mamie Nichols, lived 2 blocks from me. A lot of people know Miss Mamie. She got a lot of stuff named after her in South Philly. And she was a major force in terms of making me focus my energy. She saw a potential in me. She made sure I got a chance to go to college. She made sure I had summer jobs. She put me in a Saturday program because she thought I was too rough. And she put me in a program, taught me how to put lipstick on. But Miss Mamie was always there. She was like the mom kind of person, the solid mom for me. And up until the day she passed, I always remind, she was an educator and a social worker also, but a community builder. So she had been my role model early on what women have to do to not just build community, but sustain communities, keep it going, and always know that there's resources out. Miss Mamie could find anything for anybody. You go to her, she would never tell you no. Her favorite word was, "I'll get back to you."
Because I'm going to find a way.
She's going to find a way, And my father's word was always, "Let me ponder on that." So these 2 people always knew that somewhere out there they could find something you needed. They just had this faith that they were going to locate it and find it for whatever it was you needed or could help. So I'm kind of like that. I don't accept no's. I don't accept no,
Listen, we got to find another way. We got to find a third way.
Another way,
But what I love about what you just told us, right? Like you claim it as non-traditional, but I mean, talk about breaking every stereotype and every narrative, meaning you were raised by a man, number one.
Yes.
You had a black father, a stable black father. So this whole narrative about fathers out here and fathers not being able to take care, don't want to take care of their kids. You was breaking down them barriers. Your dad was back then.
He did hair. He did hair. He cooked.
He cooked.
He cooked. He's a great cook. I tell you, he cooked fish and grits, but he cooked for us every day till we got old enough that we could step up and help out more.
Help him out.
But he still would do the major cooking for us, and he did hair. If my sisters ain't want to do my hair, and I wanted a certain style, like a bang or something, he'd get me at that stove and curl me some bangs. And
I love this.
that kind of stuff. So I was raised very non-traditional with always had a strong father figure. He was not an absentee father. He ain't hang out. He stayed out. The latest he stayed out was like 10 o'clock on a weekend, and always came back home.
Came home to his kids.
Yeah, so he never brought a lot of women around us, even though we found out later on he had a lot of girlfriends.
But he made y'all a priority.
That's it. And he was
priority.
He was very handsome, and everybody knew he was a good dad. And so a lot of the women was after him.
Oh, that's attractive.
But he kept them away from us. He kept them away from us. Yeah.
Listen, I love that because again, even as a man, he showed you an example for like what he would want you to be, as a woman. But even the community approach to how the support that you guys had in raising you and your siblings. I think that's beautiful.
And they would tell us, like, we'd be outside playing. They said, "Aren't you supposed to be mopping the floor today?" Like, he told them what we supposed to do. And then the moms in the neighborhood would say, "Isn't this a day you're supposed to be doing the laundry, going to the laundromat?" So even though he going and at work, they knew on the block what we were supposed to be doing. Yeah, So all those eyes and ears was on us all the time. They could tell us, different things that we were supposed to be doing. And, one of the worst things we came up with was to bring shame on your family. That was like a no-no, especially my father, because we knew how much he sacrificed. He could have just went out there and been a free male and start his life over after he lost these 2 wives. He could have just gave his kids away and just started over and did his thing. So he sacrificed a lot, a lot to keep us together, and never complained about it. We never ever heard him say, "I'm sorry I kept y'all. I'm sorry y'all this. I'm gonna call your aunts. The ones who wanted us. I'm gonna get your godmom to come get you." Never ever heard that from him. So I'm always grateful for that. So people hear me. I'm a big defender of black males.
Yes.
You can't do no black male bashing around me.
We see why, and we see why. Grateful for that experience.
You've got the wrong one if you want to do some black male bashing. It is not
on Mama Maisha's time. So, Mama, one of the amazing things, of course, that I got to experience from you was you as an educator. And a community educator in a lot of ways. But, I mean, you went beyond that. You taught at collegiate places. You've experienced teaching in K-12 settings and all of that. Can you talk to us about your journey in being an educator? What inspired you to be an educator?
Well, it's funny. Because when I first was coming out of high school, education wasn't an interest of mine. It was starting to be the beginning of technology. What we call the computers and things, but it was the electric typewriters. They was just coming out, and IBM was like breaking through. So I really thought I was going to go into that. It was either that or medicine. So my first track was to try and do some things in medicine, but the activism got in the way. I'm still trying to go to school, and I'm in this medical track, and I'm also I'm an activist. I'm in the Black Power movement, so I'm at demonstrations. Volunteering at the Panther Clinic, health clinic that was in North Philly. And I got called into the dean's office, and they're talking to me about volunteering at the Panthers office, saying that I'm taking materials from the medical programs and giving it to the Panthers. Now, how they knew I was volunteering at the Panther program, let you know how we were being followed and stuff like that.
Seville,
so this happened early. Then I realized that, I said I wasn't bringing any, maybe some Band-Aids or something. I wasn't like bringing over major stuff to the Panthers clinic. I had never joined the Panther party, but I was very supportive of them in different ways. So that let me know then that these people were willing, and told me they were going to, I had a scholarship for school then, and they were going to retract my scholarship if I didn't stop volunteering at the Panther Clinic, so I was young then and radical, and otherwise I just told them to kiss my behind, and I walked out the class, out the building, to my father and Miss Mamie's. They were upset about it, but the fact that they were going to try and intimidate me and all that. So Miss Mamie said, "Well, you shouldn't have left until you knew you had someplace else to go. Then you could have told them to kiss your behind." So she was telling me she was glad I did it. But I need to always make sure I got to fall back or let her know what's coming, so she could have did some intervention. So she kind of helped me, but I was just very reactionary about it.
Yes.
But so she said, you don't never take a move unless you know you can handle the consequences. and you got some fallback, So this was one of my first lessons about being an activist, and not being reactionary and that kind of stuff.
And some of that sacrifice that comes with it too.
The sacrifice that comes. So that's how I got out of the medical profession. So then I'm immersed in movement. I'm just like, got some little jobs and got a little civil service job. And my father and Miss Mamie sticking on me, you need to get back in school. But by then I'm immersed in the Black Power movement. And we had all the demonstrations. I go down to Newark to help with the election of the first black mayor. I'm at demonstrations with my older sister or watching her children so she can go to demonstrations. But she was involved with the civil rights stuff. So I'm just like that. That's where I'm at for quite a few years. And I finally joined an organization. And I'm at the first student demonstration for Black Studies at the school district to bring Black history. Because my younger sister was still in high school, and I done pulled her into activism.
Okay.
So and Miss Mamie is organizing these young students because she used to work at the school. Miss Mamie did. So she's organizing the students to participate at the school district. And she's telling me and my dad that your younger sister's going to be there. And my father said, well, you done pulled her into this activism. You better be there to protect her and make sure she's okay. So that's how I got at the school district. I'm at these meetings, make sure my sister's okay so my father won't be really mad at me. And Miss Mamie's pulling me in. So I'm wound up at this district, at the school district, this demonstration where over 2,000 students show up. And I'm like hiding and protecting her when the police get sick on us. And I'm like over top of her like Mama here. I said, boy, she come home beat up my father. It's going to be over.
You.
We're not, so, we covering up, we hiding. A couple of brothers put us in the corner and protected us. So a lot of the students got beat real bad. Some of the adults did. And so that was my really first, that did it for me. When I saw how they beat those young children like that, I was like, we got to do something about it. And I asked Miss Mamie which organization should I join. I said, I can't do civil rights. I said, I'm sorry, Miss Mamie, I'm just not. That's not my temperament. I can't turn the other cheek. I thought they were beautiful and strong, but I knew that wasn't me. I could not fight back. I could not,
You say, I don't come with that level of patience.
I don't come. I don't have that kind of ascension, So I said, so she said, well, there's other groups out there and everything. And the Panthers was, emerging and stuff around then too. And I liked the Panthers, but I wanted something that was more focused around. I was starting to get an interest in education because Miss Mamie thought I would be a good teacher because she saw how I interacted with children and everything. So, but I joined an organization called Urban Survival Training Institute, and it was a cultural nationalist organization. And my husband was a member. He was a part of the school demonstration too at the school board. He was an organizer at Gratz High School. He was the Gratz. He was one of the Gratz High School organizers for that demonstration, and that's where we met. We met at the meetings, the organizing for things.
Listen, the love that comes out of struggle, right?
That's right. You meet on you meet on the battlefront. You meet somebody on the battlefront. It's a bonding that takes place. It really does.
The protection, the love, the camaraderie in that.
That's it. It's better to meet them on the battlefront than a bar stool.
I know that's right. Listen, I'll take that.
You know why they're on the battlefront. You don't know why they might be stuck on that bar stool.
That's right.
So we become activists, and we're involved with all the activist issues. Going to help with the elective of first black officials, providing protection in the black community. My husband took some really bad beatdowns from the police, really bad beatdowns. Sometimes he couldn't walk for weeks afterwards. When the police was really suppressing the black radicals and everything, I was pregnant, big and pregnant. They threatened to kick the baby out of my stomach.
Oh, Lord. Oh.
So we went, this is a kind of terror. That's why I said I'm a survivor of that era.
Yes.
And we just stayed strong, and we're going through all this, but we also building institutions. We got organizations, and we having events. We starting our own free schools then.
Yes.
We forming these small enclaves, or forming larger formations together. Like our organization was Urban Survival Training Institute, but we became one of the founding members of the Congress of African People, which was a national group. That's how I met Kamara through the Congress of African People.
Mama Kamara Jordan.
Yeah, because the Kazanas who started Sullivan-Ongoza were in the Congress of African People also. So it was like this umbrella group that everybody was under, right? The cultural nationalists was under. And so I became a part of that. And this is where the schools were popping up in the city: Sullivan-Ongoza, African Cultural Institute, Marcus Garvey Shule, quite a few. We had quite a few independent black schools in Philadelphia that came from under that. And so I taught in the school. When I wasn't teaching, I was a board member of the school to sustain, particularly Marcus Garvey and the Institute of African Learning. And we partner with like Sullivan-Ongoza and the other independent schools that were in the city. Everybody, share resources and work together, because that's what we're trying to do.
What you're trying to
different
do.
sections of the city. But I went back to school to be an educator because we start in these independent schools. And I know I'm a natural teacher, but I knew I needed to learn pedagogy.
Pedagogy, some formal training there.
Yeah, we needed to learn pedagogy and how to, to make sure that our culture, that is culturally relevant. So I went back to community college first. Miss Mamie said, when we get you back in, make sure you're solid. She got me in community college. I graduated from community college, then went to Temple, to finish up for my BA, and, then went on and got my master's in education. Then I'm doing education. I'm teaching adults literacy, GED, and I'm running programs at Temple, the community education program, and I'm teaching, and I'm getting this reputation for being a great teacher of adults and also doing social justice work with them. I got offered a scholarship to University of Penn to go to their school of social work to get my master's in social work.
That's awesome,
so
Mama.
I got a full ride scholarship to get a master's in social work because of the type of education I was doing. Because I had adult students and homeless people were in front of me, and I'm teaching GED or I'm teaching ABE, Adult Basic Ed. So these people come with real life issues, and I can't teach them see spot run. I'm teaching them how to read what the current welfare policy is.
Because it got to translate to life. It's
got to translate to life. So the words start. I had one student. He worked at the casinos was just open in Atlantic City, and he was a janitor cleaning, and he kept coming to this class, and he had chemical burns on his hands, and he had a bad one on his face because he can't read. He can't read what not to mix together. He just mixing stuff to probably ammonia, whatever those chemicals, they use. So I had him bring the labels in to class. And I'm teaching him how to read. And them chemical words, it's all phonetic. Long syllables, multi-syllabic. So this is the best way to teach phonics is to give him a whole bunch of these
words that you can sound out.
But enough that he would know which ones can't mix together, and I'm reading up on chemicals and things like that, what works. So I'm working with these adults that got these real world issues. Sisters that are homeless or they abuse, they come to class with everything in a plastic bag. And I'm finding them a place to go, or my husband's helping them out. We like an informal social service agency.
Yes, I was going to say, listen, supporting the community.
Why are we supposed to be teaching? And so, I know I got that scholarship again because of Mamie Nichols. I refuse to believe how else they would have knew about the work I was doing. Because I would always call her sometime if I needed, where can I send this student? Or I got a student got this issue. I always call Miss Mamie. And I think Miss Mamie knew about that scholarship, and she's the one that recommended me for me to go to grad school at UPenn.
Listen, the blessing of Miss Mamie Nichols, like that's beautiful. That again, you had her as an angel in your life. So one of the things, though, Mama, that you mentioned that I really want to highlight is your involvement in the Black Independent School movement. That was strong in Philadelphia. You hear about a lot of Black independent schools, but when you talk about when that started and what was going on in Philly, I hear so much rich history about it. Can you tell us why that work was so important at that time for Black folks to start to build their own?
Well, it still is.
Yes, it is.
It hasn't changed. It's just as important now. We were coming into our consciousness then in terms of black power and being proud to be Black, and we knew these people weren't going to teach us. And during those times, we would have school strikes that would last for months. And so, we're like, what are we going to do when the children are out of school? The school will just shut down, real long strikes. months. The strikes would last a long time. In a couple of schools, the Black Teachers Union, because I was teaching them, started strike schools so the children could still be getting content while we were striking. And they would be in churches in the neighborhood. So we knew the importance that our children can't be missing all this time. While the teachers are trying, get a better salary and stuff. What's going on with the children? So, so in the Black community, we always knew that we had to be the ones that make sure the children were educated, right? From our ancestors, out of enslavement, 3 things they did. They looked for their family. They built institutions. They built schools, they built hospitals, right? And they built churches.
Yep.
Soon as they came from enslavement, that was what they did. Families try to find their families that was dispersed all over the place and build institutions. And there were schools, churches, and hospitals. And so we always been institution builders. We knew that's how you stabilize your community. That's how you learn to sustain yourself, right? And develop, not just survive, but to develop. So we carry that. In the 60s, we went back to that. We went back to everybody was saying, for higher education. We said, no, we got to get these children earlier. So a lot of the programs like the Head Starts and all these programs started in Black communities. Saying that these children need a little help because parents are working 3 and 4 jobs. The parents don't have the time to be putting in, and a lot of the parents didn't have the education themselves. So a lot of these churches had little Bible schools and little after-school programs, and it was always a lot geared towards the children. And it was that community was very child-centered. Yep. And so we said we wanted it. We knew that we didn't get a good education. We knew we got a very racist education. And if we wanted these children to challenge the system, that we was going to make sure that we had to educate them to know what they were responsible for changing the system. So we started these schools, and I think the first was John Churchville School, Freedom Day.
Yes,
Freedom Day up on Ridge Avenue.
We talk a lot about Freedom Day.
So that was the first one, and I remember we were going there to check it out. We was very impressed with Churchill School. And but Churchill wasn't a nationalist like us, because we so cocky then. We blackety black, we can make it blacker than Churchill's, that kind of Churchill school. So but he was just doing such great work. That school just really impressed us that children were reading early, and they were still learning Black history and everything. And so a couple people said we're going to try to. So the first real independent, real African-centered school was the Institute of African Learning. And it was down South Philly on Fernan Street, in the Point Breeze area. So my firstborn son, he went there. And then they moved to North Philly. And one time they was housed in what was the Heritage House. So that was my first dive into independent schools, was in the Institute of African Learning, because I had my children in there. And as a parent, it was like a co-op. You didn't have to pay tuition if you did put some time in at the school, either teaching or cleaning or transporting children, So it was very good, like Ujima kind of thing, having the school. And it was a small school. Couldn't have been no more than about 7 or 8 students.
Okay. And
but we outgrew it. We moved to North Philly for more space, and moved into the UNIA for a minute, the UNIA building. We were in the Heritage House, and then it wound up in its own 3-story building on Cecil B. Moore, around 18th and Cecil B. Moore. Okay. Right across the street from the Panther headquarters. The Black Panthers headquarters.
Growing, moving, and learning. I love that. And Mom, I want to highlight too, just so people when I'm talking about mothers in the movement, mothers did a lot of mothering of the community, but you were a mother. You had your own kids that were part of these schools and the movement as well.
Oh, no, my children were in there, and some of my nieces and nephews were in there. I got them in there also. And I raised 3 community kids. They were neighbors' children. Neighbor lived in back of me, and she had, unstable mental illness. But she would come and go, and she shut down for a couple months, and she'd get herself together. So she just had another bad breakdown one year, and I said, I'm going to let the kids were close to my children anyway. I said, I'm going to let them here till she get herself together. She never got herself together. But I refused to put the children in DHS. So when she did get herself together, I didn't want her to have to fight to get her children
back.
So my husband and I, we wound up being 3, but when we first had them, it was 5 of them. Okay. But 2 of them didn't want to stay with us because they wasn't used to the structure. Yes. Because their mom had been so, mentally unstable that they got away with a lot of stuff. Yep. But once all 5 of them was with me and my husband, you got to do homework, you got to help clean, you got to do all this kind of stuff. So 2 of the older ones couldn't handle it. So the 3 youngest stayed with us, and we never put them in DHS. We never put them in child welfare, and they stayed with us till they were adults and went out on their own. And so between the 3 I birthed and the other 3 social children, I raised 6 children.
What is such it permeates throughout you and everything that you're talking about today is just the community aspect of what it was back then, how folks really took care of each other. Another major thing to really highlight in this is we're talking about Black independent schools, or we're talking about the movements that happened back then. The community was all in. Yes. Meaning the educators that were at their schools, their kids went there too. Everybody was from the neighborhood. Everybody was from the community. That just builds a different type of atmosphere, camaraderie, accountability in the movement. When you have that, it definitely builds up. We're all in this together. Instead of having these people who from the outside.
We knew it was a movement. And when you met somebody, the first thing you ask them, what group you belong to.
Okay.
You ask what group you belong to or what church you belong to. Because everybody had to be in something. So the church, you was in Nation of Islam, you was in the Panther Party, you was in this, but you had to be in something. And if you said nothing, then you get the side eye and telling you when the next meeting is that you can come to.
Come on,
we'll give you a list of, because we couldn't accept that you had some level of involvement. So that's the difference in a movement. A movement is when you got enough that you got a critical capacity that we could hold each other accountable, and so everybody was in something. The church were active in, it was an activist church. It wasn't just these mega prosperity ministries they do now, mega churches around prosperity. The churches were centers. They were centers of activism. They opened up during school strikes so the children can still be taught something, and we had conventions that come through the city. The churches would let people stay there and put blankets on the floor. The churches, and we radicals in the churches, we said we've got a bunch of people coming in town and they can't afford hotels. And they said, can they bring sleeping bags? We got sleeping bags. We got cots. And to sleep inside the church, in the church gym or in the church kitchen or, So the churches were supportive in different ways, and all the organizations were doing something. And that what makes it a movement. Right now, we don't have a movement. People say there's movement, but it's not under one umbrella. It's all these little separate silos.
Things happening.
Yes, there's a lot of separate silos.
So what advice would you have for Black educators? How do we get back to that? How do we connect communities back to schools in this current state of education?
Well, in teaching them first, through Say Yes, and one of the things I used to fight with as an educator, and I was at University of Penn, they had this thing they would have you thinking that the school you're in, that you got to bend over backwards to bond with the school administrators, and you got to do this. And I said, no, your first ally is the parents in the community. I said, everybody else are tourists in the lives of these children. They basically
I love
tourists.
That description. They are tourists.
They're tourists. They're tourists in the lives of children. One year they in, and next year they go on, the children move on. But their family and their community is there forever. So I said, my primary resource and my primary ally is the parents. In the community.
That's
so
right.
Having that focus changes how you approach education, right? So this is why we put so much emphasis on partnering with them. Even though we gave those children scholarships, we gave parents scholarships. So we made education for the whole family. We ain't pick one child out and say, you're going to get the scholarship and all your siblings ain't going to get nothing. Your parents not going to get nothing. That's the model that used to be out there before. We gave the whole family the scholarship.
That's right.
So nobody can feel left out and undermine the other. Everybody got equal access to support and educational resources and remediation. So if you see the parents and the family and the community as your first ally, your first responders in the lives of children, The rest of the administrators, and I was an administrator, and I know, just 9 to 5 for them. It was never 9 to 5 for me, Weekends, evenings, whenever you need me. So in the field of social work, they used to tell me I was too enmeshed with my family.
Too enmeshed. You care too much, huh?
I care too much. And I said, yeah, but look at my outcomes compared to yours. I said, and I said, there's never too much. You can never be too close to a child and too close to a family. I said, that's why they asked you the first time you having problems. They asked you the first thing, they asked you got kids? You're not black. That's the first thing going to ask you. You got kids? They want to know, how can you relate to what I'm doing? And so this whole thing about, and I used to tell them, this enmeshment is going to get y'all hurt or y'all going to get low outcomes. And that's a major thing in social work and any kind of therapeutic community. You ain't supposed to bond and you're supposed to keep objectivity from your client base. I want to be all in their life. They can come all up and we get messy together. We problem solve. We problem solve it out. We share resources. We be mad and we make up. No, I like the mess.
Yes. What you like is community, right? Because it's the idea of community. Because the idea of community then creates trust. Because when you think about real life and how real life goes, how do you work with people, take advice from people, or even, like you said, bond with people that you don't know? How can I trust you? How do I even know you have my self-interest, right? And it's an interest to yours, so you want the best for me. How can any of that happen without a bond? How can any of that happen without trusting? And we all know, because you're married, I'm married. You can't really trust somebody unless you go through something, child. We got to be able to go through something together.
You got to have some mess. You got to have some mess. And but the teachers just want to sit in the teachers' lounge and talk about the children, but the parents ain't coming in for the home and school meeting. I said, they had to come in, I go to their house, so I was known for doing home visits. I ain't got no problem. I do home visits. They did. I go see them on whatever time you say you could be there, I'd be there. You can't come in because you're working 3 or 4 jobs. I understand that.
Yes.
So I just know how the community was there for me and for my dad. And so I want to be in the kind of community that was there for me. That's the one I want to build. That's the kind of one I want to sustain, because that's what helped me to get over. And I remember one year I got a student, and the teachers was complaining the student was so smelly. It was a little sibling grouping. And I was teaching at Elverson then at 12th and Susquehanna. And so, at the end of the year in the teacher's lounge, everybody going to tell you, I'm not going to send you so-and-so because you don't want that child. I used to stop going in the teacher's lounge at the end of the school year, because I want to meet children on my own terms, not what kind of relationship you had with them. I want my own relationship, so I don't want to hear you labeling anything. So I get this one child, and she coming in every day, and she's smelly. I had her come in earlier and washing her up and putting a little oil on and getting her hair together so the children won't tease her the rest of the day. And I'm bringing in stuff so you can help her keep her personal hygiene. And I just decided to go past the house because it was a whole little group. It was her and it was about 3 other siblings. So then I'm taking care of all 3 of them in the morning now, so they don't get teased in the rest of the school. So I decided to go over to the house. The mom was a quadriplegic.
Okay. So she couldn't move.
Nobody at the school knew.
Nobody cared enough to investigate it.
Nobody at the school knew that they had a quadriplegic mom. And she holding at these children. They children taking care of each other. The oldest one, they parentified. They helping the younger ones. But there's all they can do but so much, And so here I call Miss Mamie again. Let her know what's going on. She tells me what's out there, what kind of support can come in place. Somebody can come in the house and clean. And so she's letting me know all this kind of stuff. And the whole children's lives change because I did a home visit. And these children have been in that school for years because they had older siblings than this one child was in my classroom. But nobody ever bothered to go find out why these children were dirty and smelly every day. And this is when they had school social workers, school nurses. This is when the schools had some resources. And no one knew that this was the thing that was going on with those children. And just putting some level of services in there, the whole trajectory of those children changed.
And it just sounds like over time there just had been a breach in what we would call community amongst folks
Yes.
in the education setting. And I think, you hinted towards this, but a lot had to do with allowing more tourists into the lives of children, allowing people to be out on tour with our kids instead of, people who are going to be permanent fixtures in their lives, in their community, in their development, that are going to help and support our children. But one of the things you make me think about is how can we do a better job at organizing parents to demand better for their children in education right now. You've done tons of parent organizing, so I would love for you to speak to that. How can we get our parents organized to demand better education for our children?
Well, one of the things we did is say yes, is we brought them in for fun things first. A lot of times we bring parents in is not for fun things. So relationships are key. You have to build relationships that's not always around a crisis, and because if you got a stronger relationship, it'll withstand the crisis that comes up. Because crisis is going to come, is this life. So we did a lot of fun stuff to bind. We did binding, fun things with the parents, with the kids, and so, just exposing the things they wouldn't have. We bring somebody in just to show them how to do facials and feet. Not asking them for anything, just to come and enjoy yourself. And plan weekend things, and just slowly start to infuse in more kind of stuff. If you could change something about the school and the parents, we had the best parent volunteers. Half the parents never went to parent meetings for the school, but our parent meetings be loaded. The Home and School Association was jealous of us. We had to get them our attendance. We had to get them our attendance to show parents do come to the school. But we just took the time to let them know we appreciate and that we saw them as our first ally, the first responders of these children, and asked them if we gave them a little budget, what would you change in the school if you had $1,000? Because they know what's going on. The kids come back and say, we ain't got this, we don't have that, the teachers don't. So the parents know. So we empowered them to know they could make a difference. They had control over some resources. The ones we got to volunteer in the classroom, be teachers' assistants, gave them a little stipend to do that so they can actually see. So they can't always, they say, that ain't as easy as we thought it was. They come back and tell the other parents, your child is a handful, So, but they will believe it from their peers, right? So the more parents we could get in there, they impacted the larger community. So Say Yes was a small cohort of students, but we had what we call the Say Yes Friendlies.
I love that.
Who quadrupled the amount. And we treated them just like they got the full scholarship from us, and their parents could count on us. Even though they didn't get the scholarship, we made sure if we had a Say Yes child in the classroom, we supplied the whole classroom, not just our Say Yes child. So after a while, the teachers wanted our kids because they came with resources.
That's right.
But we just made sure that sometimes the parents would come back and say, that teacher don't have, that teacher not doing. The parents became our eyes and ears at the school. They became resources themselves for the teachers because the teachers could appreciate having someone in the room to help them a couple hours a day. The parents would come in, and we had a parent room there for them for a while till the school took the room from us because they started expanding the grades. But the parents was there, and they knew that the Say Yes parents, they could count on them, and that we did. Then we started, when they switched over to the new math, we brought people in to teach the parents the new math so they could help the children at homework time. So you bring in something the teachers can't even teach it right, and then you wonder why the parents can't help. So we brought in math specialists to teach the parents the new math. So because every parent wants to help their child. So whatever we found out that they whatever was interfering with them being there for their children, that's when we put the resources there. And that benefited the children. Everybody said, well, let's pump the money into the children. No, pump the money into the parents. The children going to benefit.
No, that's right. And again, in everything you talk about, it's about relationships. Yeah. So when we're talking about organizing parents, I think sometimes people look for these very technical answers to happen. But at the root of what you're saying is you got to have a relationship. And you can't go in asking people to do stuff and you're not willing to give and pour into people. I think a lot of organizations are about tokenism, right? Like you want people and parents to advocate for you, but you don't want to do anything for them. at all.
Well, we always said there's a qualitative difference in organizations and institutions as being in the community or being of the community. It's a qualitative difference. Something's in, it's just a location. It's just there. This holding up is just got a footprint. But if you of it, it's entirely different. But most of them, they tell you, I'm in the community. Yes, you are.
Your program is in the community. Your building is in the community. But are you
of the
community?
Of the community. It's a qualitative difference. And that's the hard part. The schools are in the community.
But they are not of the community. They are not in service to the community, which then...
They're not in service of the community. They're not in partnership with the community. They're not. They're just in it. They're just a bricks and mortar.
And I think this sometimes with schools, like there's this argument of like the schools are expected to do everything. But you're not, actually. There are plenty of resources, plenty of organizations that will partner with you to wrap your arms around children and to wrap your arms around families. But I think that sometimes at the pain point of what teachers are saying, like, I'm expected to be everything. No, the problem is your institution doesn't allow the necessary resources, so you don't have to be everything. So all you do have to worry about is teaching. And I think that becomes a struggle.
And give parents a real role in the school, not just to sell cookies and fundraise and sell popcorn. So they give them a very limited access and very limited role. Raise money. Don't come here questioning the principal. Don't come here questioning. Don't come with all that. Raise some money with your home and school association and sponsor a Christmas party, and the kids can get some gifts.
Very surface.
It's not deep. It's very surface stuff. So they selling pretzels, or they selling this, or they doing, having whatever little stuff. But they don't want them at the decision making level. They don't want them there where's the resources going, allocations and policy making. So they keep them a distance. Why? Because they're in the community, not
that's
of
it.
That's a problem.
Because
if they were of it, they would know that that's their first resource for those children. They their children's first responder, and how resource rich those parents are. They may not have be looking flashy and all that, but you ask a parent. I will ask a parent in a minute. This kid needs some stuff. Who doing it, and where we can get it from in the community? Who handling this in your community? Who we go to? Because they know who's in the community. And so I said, well, this kid needs better uniforms. They got little raggedy sneakers. Who's handled that in your community? They tell you.
They do know. And anything that's like of the community, we know that Black children thrive. And for me, any significant, especially education movement, where parents and community are at the home of that and at the center of that, Black children are going to thrive. And it's been proven. But again, we question why is education in a state it is right now. Do we have parents at the home? Do we have community at the home? We don't.
Because education is coming from a Eurocentric paradigm.
Well, tourists, right? You said it.
The tourists. And you know how tourists, they just want to go through. It's like visiting something.
Take all the resources, right? Right. We coming to buy. We coming to get. Ooh, this looks cool. Can I try this on? Ooh, I want to ride that ride. Sightsee.
And go back home and talk about, the
things that they
experience
see
over dinner.
Yes, or in the research lab, right? Make money off it.
In the research lab.
You said that. You said a word. Tourists are at the home of what's going on right now in education.
And Eurocentric tourists, the ones that they want a camera and they just want to see you at your worst. And the more exotic the experience, the better they like it. So, because we got more to talk about in the research lab or over there.
And we're not interested in this experience changing because this is a thrill for us. No. I mean, it's a thrill in terms of sight experience. It's a thrill in terms of dollars. We can make money off of this experience and the degradation. And
it's like rap. It's why whites are so attracted to rap music. Vicariously, they can live on the rough side. A couple years later, they run an industry. After they done hung out.
I done toured this lifestyle. I'm gonna be at this concert saying nigga and acting wild because I feel a kind of way. It invokes my spirit for these 2 hours. But I'm gonna go right on back to the real life that I'm living, that I'm not taking a tour on.
And run daddy's business. run mama's business that you don't inherit it or whatever you're going into. So my little tourism is over.
And continue to rap about or listen
like
to.
The gap. I call it the adult gap years. They get to do what they want before they find their real life. Yep. Rap music is part of their gap years.
I was out here selling drugs and disrespecting women, right? Yeah. Like, but in your mind, like, this is what's happening. But it's not a reality. Mm-hmm. So that's an excellent point about this fantasy living that folks are able to do at the expense of Black people. And that education is happening at the expense of Black children.
Yes.
And it's a shame.
And you can see it, and they set up these programs where they make them tourists, even if they want to be, because they say they can take anybody and turn them into a teacher. These programs that's out here, they can turn you into, no matter what the discipline is. You ain't had really
no training in pedagogy, no content expertise, none of it.
Yeah, so they put them in there, and their commitment, and they wash out within a year. So it's all this tourists. They just import more tourists into the kids through these programs that are out here now. And I'm like, how do you get to be a teacher with no real lived experience? And they just gonna say they can train you in 1 year.
Well, Mama, you said 1 year. Some of these programs train people in 10 weeks and put them in front of people's kids.
No, that bad. Oh, I thought it was at least a year. Some people do
intensive training for 10 weeks, put you in front of people's kids. You say 2 years because you're in a program and they're going to check up on you, have a couple workshops throughout 2 years. But in terms of real intense training on the pedagogy, it's like a 10 weeks. And then throughout the 2 years, you get a couple workshops, some support here and there. But they put you in front of people's kids. After that, that's why it is the way it is. That's why it's spinning. That's why it's a revolving door. That's why people like.
It's a tourism. It's a tourism.
It definitely
factory.
Is.
It's a tourism industry.
I used to.
And they get wiped out, and they go back to whatever that profession it was they was.
Or they
left
go on to the next
place.
profession, because some of these folks who are in some of these programs, if that program is on your resume, or you get catapulted into so many other different opportunities and so many other different positions because of the opportunity that this fellowship or this residency or whatever that you went in for 2 years, or you were there. Oh, boom. Now here you are sitting somewhere talking about social policy and practice because you was here.
Yeah, so now you're an expert.
Because you was in an urban school for 2 years, right? Like these are the things that are going on. And this is why you can feel the absence of schools like Black independent schools. This is why you can feel the absence of communities. This is why you can feel the absence of parents leading. But I just would love for us to really hunker down and bring back the notion of Black independent schools, and bring that movement back, and what it means to have community in our schools and education, because our children are suffering.
It's all about the will of the people to do it. You put the call out, you'd be surprised who will answer. If the call is out and there's some resources to make it happen, even though we did it before with no resources. We was just idealistic. We just out of pocket or whatever else we could get somebody to give us who worked somewhere that had resources. Because, we had people giving us books, people who were teaching in the regular school. They give us books and give us paper, give us, we ain't had no money.
Yes.
It's strictly out of pocket and just out of love. But, you put the call out there, people are interested because people know what's happening is just not serving us well. It's not doing our children well. And the few examples where you see some movement where the children and there's some community building, you just know it's just isolated and it's not being replicated, right? It's not being taken to scale. Because it's a lot. It's a lot of investment, not just resource investment, but human capital.
That's right. To do that,
to build these things. Because you see, like Sankofa,
Sankofa Freedom Academy. Shout out to Mama.
And Hotep. Yeah, Sankofa and Hotep. Those two schools I know. And in Hotep, the bonding that takes place there between the Black males is remarkable. They put a lot of Black males. That's why I appreciate, how much time Sharifna put in recruiting Black male teachers. Because I see the importance of what having those Black males at Imhotep means to these Black males coming in that school. And them brothers will go jack a brother up off a corner if they hear they out. So that this is, and they're the same way over Sankofa. Issa and them will track you down like you got a GPS in you. You know, if they think you got something else going on, they're going to come off that campus
and come and get you.
So, but they're not independent schools, but they have the
community aspect. They got that community aspect down. It is community.
They got
it's community.
The resources.
It's African centered. It's student centered. So they do have. They definitely have those aspects happening.
And they have and they're not begging for money like we were. They got the resources that come from our tax dollars, which it's supposed to be there, and they just use it well. Make sure it's each dollar. The large percentage of it is going for how it impacts the student
support
itself,
the kids.
you know, and but for independence, but they still under the control of the system, though, right? They still got to use the state tests. They still got to fall under this requirement, you know. So how independent can you be working under that kind of system that can still tell you got to use the Common Core
and trying to fight from within.
They still tell you got to give them the testing and every year for the state test.
Yes.
You know, all that. You know, if Dr. Mama had her druthers, she wouldn't do none of that stuff.
She wouldn't. But I want to make something clear. She wouldn't. But people think that when we're saying that we wouldn't, that means like, black people ain't down with assessment and testing. That's not what we're saying.
No.
She would have her own.
No, the right
Yes,
instrument,
she would have her own. She would build her own. She probably have her own. She probably do her own. Yeah. But she would have what's right for her children and her community to show, definitely where they're thriving.
An instrument that measures our children and our culture and our progress. But
that's not somebody else's time.
So that's a part about the independent schools. It's like the private schools. They don't put their children through all that stuff. You know, they don't put their children through that testing and drill and kill and
all that kind of
stuff like that. They not.
And
they still getting arts. They still getting enrichment.
All types of art, enrichment,
all that stuff
freedom,
dried up.
All types of stuff.
No enrichment left in the schools. No enrichment. You know, for someone who's a creative person like me,
you into arts, Mama.
I would have had a fit that if I didn't have any art or enrichment.
Yes.
You know, it's just unbelievable. I always wanted to be an art teacher.
Mama, you would have been a phenomenal art teacher. You know, that's what you do.
I haven't given up on it yet.
Say, you know, you were into those crafts.
I never could get. I never could get to the art teachers, because when I was subbing or trying to get placement, art teachers don't never leave, right? You know, they don't never need a sub because the students love them. They don't get worn down like the other teachers. You know, that's their passion.
You know, like that is what they're doing.
That's it.
They're in that life.
But I never could get I could never get an art. And that was my minor was art.
Okay.
Ed. I just wanted to teach art. You know,
Mama, you still got time, okay? There's still time.
I haven't given up.
Still time. But Mama, we are actually coming up on time. So there's two more things I want to do before we get off of here. Is one, I would love for you just in this moment to really talk to our current generation of freedom fighters and liberators that are in our school community. Just share a message with them. What message do you have for our current freedom fighters and liberators in our education community?
Mm-hmm. First, that you are not by yourself. You know, don't never think that you are so unique that you're the only one feeling this way. You're the only one can make a difference. Your job is to find someone else that's similar to you. You got to hook up. Don't be out there fighting all by yourself. That's how you get burned out and you get dispirited. Create community. If it's just one more person, you know, for the support, for the accountability. But don't be a solo out there trying to make a difference. And even though you're in a hostile environment and everybody around you, you'd be surprised if somebody in that building, even if it's the janitor or the cafeteria person, that feels the same way you do.
Yeah.
And wants change. Your job, you got to find them. You got to be a prospector, mining in your area, believing that those jewels and gems is there. Are they in that building, or they right up the street from the building at the corner store or the laundromat or somewhere. But don't think you don't think too much of yourself that you're the only one feeling that way and thinking you're the only one can make a difference. Connect with others. That's the African way. We connect. We're relational. We're relational. And the more you do things outside of that circle of others, then you become more vulnerable. You don't have no checks and balances. You ain't got nobody to accountability. You ain't got no one to mirror you, to reflect on. It's not healthy for you or for the children you're working with. Because you're trying to teach the children to work together, but you're not an example of it.
Great point, Mama. Build a coalition, build a community, y'all. Go out there and build and then the last thing.
Build it in your classroom first. Have your children build a community in their classroom.
And you be an example of that.
Have the children build a community. Yeah, let them be your allies. Let your students be your allies, right? So you got to build relationships no matter where you at. And if you're not, you're just working outside of your culture. And that's why you ain't getting too much success. You're not. We're relational.
By nature, that's right. People. And Mama, the last thing we invite guests to do on our show is to thank a Black teacher. So I know you talked a lot about Miss Mamie, definitely through this. But if there are any other Black teachers that you would like to thank, past or present, definitely give you the floor to do that right now.
Well, definitely Ms. Lele is an educator. But I'm thinking, my cousin, she was like my sister cousin, Inez Jackson. She passed a few years ago. She was an educator, an award-winning educator. And in the lower grades, she had K through 2. That was her grades. And won awards all over the city, Teacher of the Year and all that. She had retired, right? When I'm at Say Yes, and I got these children in these lower grades, and they just not, and there's no program at there that's helping my children to learn at the school. She came out of retirement and worked with my children.
Wow.
Right? And she took them back to the basics, back to phonics, writing, just in a short and the love. And she did home visits. She would leave this is after school. She in the after school program. After the after school program, she's still going to their house.
Them out.
She's still going to their house. So she was an example of me of this educators, right? This came out of her retirement. You know, maybe I was crying and begging her that my children ain't learning, ain't nobody teaching her at this school. I don't know what. But she came. And so I just want to encourage people who might be watching now thinking about retire. You never retire if you're an educator. Always continue to find ways to teach. Don't isolate yourself. Even if you just got to teach something fun in the Bible studies or church studies or somebody, a niece or a nephew, continue to engage children because they keep you real. They keep you real. They keep you honest, right? And it'll keep you current, you know. You work with these children, and they just need it because you'd be surprised. You might be the lifeline for them, and you don't want to also be a tourist in their life. Don't make the commitment unless you're in there for the long haul. You know, don't say I'm gonna make a 3-month commitment. You know, if you're gonna do that, let the children know that straight up. You know, but try and be in people's lives for the long haul. You know, and just be as authentic as you can, and just build relationships. If you don't do nothing but go eat popcorn together or ice cream, it ain't got to be that deep that you teaching. You teach by example that you care.
Yes.
You know, just take someone out and go get some popcorn or go throw rocks in the water. You know, it just any level of engagement elevates a child. Right? Elevates humanity. It can be a friend that is feeling isolated and alienated. But always reach out and try to connect to others. Mama. You know?
Mama, you said it.
That's what I want to leave people. Don't be an individualist. That's not us.
That's not us. Mama, you said a word today. Well, I want to thank my mama, Maisha, for coming on today to Building the Black Educator Pipeline podcast, y'all. Remember, please subscribe. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and then tell them again. We will see y'all back in about a week for another wonderful episode of Building the Black Educator Pipeline podcast. We out, y'all. Peace.